So it is my great pleasure to introduce Melissa Kaler, who has been serving as our Wisconsin Pyramid Model data coordinator for the last several months, and has really done a lot of the heavy lifting to get us to this place where we're at. I'll also acknowledge our Jared Baldwin from the Wisconsin Alliance for Infant Mental Health, who has also sort of taken the data and entered it into the system so that hopefully when you're ready to move ahead, you're going to feel pretty confident that all of your information is there. So without further ado, Marissa's going to walk us through some of the features of the system today and talk about our next steps.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, so like what Julie said, my name is Marissa Kaler. I am seeing so many names that I recognize from some emails. So let me first just say thank you for responding to those emails and sending me your data and helping me kind of clarify that. It's been really helpful, and we've been able to back enter most of it into the system. My background is for the past 7 years, I was working in Verona schools for the Verona area First 5 Years program as kind of the pyramid model coach and data coordinator. And then my family moved to Birmingham, Alabama, where we are currently located. But when I was in Verona, I really developed a pretty strong interest in how we collect data and use data. And so when this opportunity came along to kind of stay connected to the Wisconsin pyramid model and kind of help with the data collection, I jumped at it because I was just really excited to kind of be able to stay connected. So today what we're going to do is I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of this system. And when I say that, I mean, I really just want to show you what the system can do. And I don't want to get too bogged down in kind of like the real like details and nitty gritty of it. And the reason for that is we have like 40 minutes today. And I just feel like if we spend a lot of time talking about how to enter every specific thing, we're going to end up using all of our time doing that. And we've made a lot of resources, including YouTube tutorials and lots of printable resources that you can use as you kind of navigate the system on your own. I have one little thing I'd also want to say is that I just want to say I really appreciate you guys being on the call today. I know that this is probably not a giant priority for you right now, given that, you know, there's like a global pandemic going on. So I do want to say thank you for coming and learning more about this. And we do understand that a new data system might not be at the top of your list, but I really encourage you to kind of figure out what pieces of this or what we might be able to use kind of moving forward. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you guys can kind of see the dashboard for PIDS, which is the pyramid model implementation data system. Here we go. And I'm sharing the test screen, which you'll see because it'll say this is a test site, very big and broad on there. And so that's what I'll be sharing today. And there's some data in here that I've kind of made up and put in, and it's all fake data, all made up. So don't try to read anything into it. So I kind of just want to start by orienting ourselves to the system and kind of showing you some of the highlights or capabilities of the system. So this is the main dashboard. When you log in, this is what you'll see. And you can see on the left-hand side here is a menu. So the first thing I just want to point out, if you're reading this right now, that this system will house all of the pyramid model data your program may collect. So you can see there's a dashboard for the ASQSE, there's a dashboard for behavior incident reports, benchmarks of quality, and tippy toes and TPAC reports. So all of those pieces can be held in this one place, just something we haven't really had the capability of doing before. So I think that's just a huge benefit of this stuff. I also think one really great thing too is that it's very intuitive. So if I need to enter any data, I can find it right here on this screen, right here on the dashboard here, by clicking on any of these dashboards. I can also find it up here in the left, the right-hand menu up here by clicking on dashboards, and all of those will be here. And this is also where I find some of those other things that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So you can kind of navigate it pretty intuitively. And then the last thing I'll just mention is that, like Julie said, we are a pilot for this. And so one benefit I think is that the system is being upgraded and updated some like pretty often. And when I say that, I just want to be clear, it's not because the system is glitchy. because it's really not. And they aren't making like big changes to like the formatting or how you do things. It's just like little, small, significant changes that make it easier to use and more meaningful. And the people who design this are just, they seem really interested in making sure that their system gets used and gets used in a really meaningful way for the programs who use it. And so they've been able to work together and kind of figure some things out. So I think that's a huge benefit as well. I'm going to quickly just show you some of that navigating piece and kind of how intuitive it can be. So I'm just going to show you one dashboard right now. I'm going to go to the benchmarks of quality 2.0. And as I'm talking, I should have said this at the beginning, I apologize, but if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. And I'm going to ask Julie maybe to kind of monitor that. Thanks, Julie. And I'll try to stop a few times while I'm talking to kind of handle some of those questions. So if anything comes up, just put it in the chat, please. So this is the BOQ 2.0 dashboard right here. And you can see if when I'm ready to enter new data, I just click the add new BOQ button now. And then I can put in a new BOQ by entering some basic information and then the ratings. And all of the dashboards that you see on this side, on the left-hand side here, they all look really similar to this, right? So there's always the button about add new data, and then you click that, and then you can add new data, basically. So another really nice feature of the system is that it gives people kind of different roles. And so depending on kind of what your access is, you kind of have a different viewing role. So right now I'm logged in as a data collector. So that's why I have all these add new pieces. So only data collectors can add data. That's the only job title that can. So I'm going to show you kind of some of those user roles that you could have. So I'm going to come up here to the upper right hand menu. And you can see again, there's the dashboard. There's a news piece that we'll talk about a little bit later. There's reports that we're going to spend a lot of awesome time on because that's a really nice feature. But I'm going to come over to manage account. So this is my account name. And I'm going to click on that to manage my account. And I'm going to actually go to select role just so I can show you some of the roles that are available in the system. So this is my fake site, the Meadow, right here. And then these are all of the different user roles that are currently available in the system. And so like I said, what I was just showing you, I was logged in as a data collector, but there's also aggregate data viewers and detailed data viewers. And that's kind of just how it sounds, right? So detailed data viewers are going to get to see more details. So they'll get to see, they might be able to see names and more in classrooms, where aggregate data viewers are going to be able to see more combined or cumulative data. So when we look at this one, the aggregate data viewer and the detailed data viewer, those are for program, so in your program. And then if you're a part of a community-wide effort, we can actually assign hub aggregate and hub detail viewers. And so the one really nice thing about this system, right, is that once you put your data into the system, it automatically allows other people that need to see it, they're able to view it. So instead of sending a spreadsheet here or sending a spreadsheet there, it's all in one place and it automatically goes to the right people. And we're going to kind of talk about some of the pieces around that and how we're going to implement that accurately and being respectful of families and teachers. But just know that that's a really nice feature that it kind of goes directly to those people. And then you'll also see there's also a state level, where you can where the state can actually look at the data as well, and as a whole, as a cumulative. All right, so to kind of keep going with this system, I'm going to log back into data collector. So to do that, I just select next to data collector. And I'm going to take 1 second and see if there are any questions before I move.
So there are, folks are wondering about back entering of data. Yep. And I've sort of already chatted that, that we've taken care of back entering anything that you've shared. People are wondering about access. Will our teachers be able to access this along with the management team? And then a related question around is, can anyone on the leadership team have access to the various roles? So a little bit around sort of how do we decide who's going to be accessing, and then a little bit of different questions of, I think, maybe around why are there 2 data collecters on the screen.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you, Julie. I can show you that. So I'm going to go back to the role the sheet I was just on. where I was selecting my role. So you probably were able to see my other data collector. So that was a different program. I assigned myself to a different program as a different data collector. It's another fake one that I made up. So I have the meadow and the ocean. So that's why there were 2 data collectors there. So because I was just able to assign myself to whatever I needed to. So I was just talking about the meadow when I was speaking. As far as access and who should get access, and Julie, feel free to kind of talk with me or argue with me or whatever we need to do. Yep. I think I can say that we are very cautious about who should have access to the system, particularly when we think about in the system, you may be collecting children's names and birth dates and a lot of sensitive information, as well as teacher names and their TPAT and tippy toe scores. So, I mean, I heard specifically we were asking about like teachers, and I would say teachers could probably have aggregate viewing, but they really shouldn't have access to all of the kids in your program, right? And again, Julie, feel free to.
Yeah, I think we have to, I really do think we have to think about this. We have to think in terms, and so you'll have an opportunity at the end of the call today to tell us who you think should have access, and to think some things through. I agree with what I agree with what Marissa said. I think we have to be careful and cautious about who has access. I think we need to be realistic, right? About how often a teacher may actually be going in to look at the data, and whether or not, as part of your program-wide implementation, having access to classroom level data is part of what you arrange for teachers, right? You create an opportunity not only to see the data, but to think and reflect about the data. So along that line, I don't think it's realistic to have every teacher have access to the data, but I think it's realistic for you to think in terms of what is our process for getting the data to teachers. Certainly right now, your leadership team is pulling data as part of almost every meeting you have. This system will allow you to do that. And you're also sharing data at your staff meetings, right? And so that might be the broader question of is how are we sharing the data with everyone who needs to see it, and what's our process for that? Mm-hmm. We are going to guide you to default to this aggregate viewer status. And to maybe this is your opportunity to think in terms of how can we have one data collector who's responsible for entering things. Marissa, could you provide just a little bit of input around some of the adjustments at the coach level? This might be a good time to talk about that.
When you say adjustments, what? Sorry, I just want to make sure.
I'm sorry. My understanding is that there's going to be an adjustment to the system.
Okay, yep, I can talk about that. Yep. So yeah, so you might have kind of been thinking a little bit about if this can house my TPAT and tippy toes data, but I can only have one data collector. What does that mean for my coaches who are collecting that data and typically entering that data into a spreadsheet? And so then that's what Julie's talking about. So when I said that the system is kind of updating and getting upgraded, this is one that is coming, we believe, that they are going to create an additional role of a coach for this right here. So like you'll be able to have a coaching role. And part of that coaching role is that you will be assigned your specific teachers that you are TPATting or tippy toes or coaching. And then for those teachers, you would be able to enter that data and view that data. And then that data would also go to the larger system, but that's all you would be able to do under that coaching role. So again, that's doing a good job of kind of limiting access to make sure you're really being careful around people's private information, but also allowing people to do what they need to do with the system. Yeah. Did I miss any questions?
There are some additional questions. Can a user be assigned? Can you assign more than one user to the same role?
Yes, you can. I'm gonna just put a little caveat there, just like kind of what you're talking about. So I think you can have, again, we want to limit access to some degree to protect private information. And I would say, so data collector is going to always have the most access. So data collector can see all the data, they can edit all the data, they can do anything they want with the data. So we really recommend as much as possible to keep that to one person if possible. Okay, so yes, you can have more than one, but just again, we want to really think about systems and what's going to make sense for your system, and making sure we're really protecting that private information. Other questions that I may have missed?
Yes.
I think we're good. I'm gonna table the question about does the system play with other systems? We'll get to that, I think, before the end.
Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds, that might be a good question at the end. And I will talk a little bit more about back entering a little bit later on too. So if that's still something you're thinking about, I will get to that as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue. So like I said, I am going to log in as a data collector, and that's because to be able to show you the system, I really want to show you everything it can do, and data collector has the most access. So I'm going to go ahead and click select next to data collector. So what I want to talk about is setting up your program appropriately so that the system really works well for you. So if you're planning on collecting more than BOQs, so you can see the BOQ benchmarks of quality right here. If you're planning on collecting any classroom level data like TPATs or tippy toes, or any child level data like the AS2SE or behavior incident reports, you're really going to need to go through the process of setting up your program. And I use the word process not because it's like really tedious or complicated, but because it is a little bit more work. And so I just really quickly want to kind of talk about what that could look like. And this, if you're writing things down, I'd really like you to write this one down. If you're going to set up your program, make sure you set up your classrooms first. You need to set up classrooms first before you go in and set up employees or children. And so I'm going to show you that really quick. I'm going to go to the classroom dashboard by clicking on classrooms over here on the left side menu. And then that'll take me to the classroom dashboard. And we are going to talk a little bit more about what each one of these kinds of looks like and kind of how to use them more effectively later on. Right now, I'm kind of talking about how to add new things. So to add a new
also, Marissa, can I just interrupt? Marissa has created a handy dandy program setup guide that's going to talk through all of this. So I know some of you are trying to write all this down. It's all captured for you already, I promise. And we're going to show you where you get that guide.
Yep, and actually I can do it right now. I think can you guys see can you see the website I just brought up? Yes, okay. So this is the new data system resource website. I'll show you how to get here in a little bit, but you can see right here, it says PIDS quick guide to set up. And that's the document that Julie is referencing as something to use when you kind of start setting up, okay? So to make a classroom, right, you just put in the name, and then you're going to put an ID number, and the ID is just to keep that classroom anonymous at certain data viewing levels and on certain reports, and it can be any combination of letters and numbers. You put in a location, and then you kind of fill out the rest of that information. When you're ready, you click save, and then that saves the classroom. So like I said, first what you're going to want to do is set up all of your classrooms. And then you'll go in and set up employees and children. And so to set up, if you are planning on collecting TPOTs or tippy toes, so classroom-wide level, you'll need to enter employees. And if you're planning on collecting AS2SE and BIRs, you'll need to set up your children. So I'm really quickly going to show you kind of what that employee dashboard looks like and what that child dashboard looks like, just so we can have a little bit more of a conversation around that. So here, this is my employee dashboard. I got here by clicking on employees on the left side menu. Go ahead and we'll take a look at Betty White's page here. Hold on one second. There we go. So I'm going to just go to edit so you can kind of see everything, all the information that I've already put in for her. When you're adding new employees, you'll add the new employee to do this. So here's my employee, Betty White. So you can see I start by entering some basic information, the first and last name, the email, the date she was hired, and then when an employee leaves, or if an employee leaves, you would then complete that termination date and termination reason. The next most important thing to kind of think about is this job function piece. So once you've gone through that basic information, it'll ask for some additional information. So you can record the trainings that person has attended, and then you would want to record what job functions that person has. And so there's a lot of job functions. You can assign more than one job function per person. And again, all of this is on that PIDS user guide, quick setup guide for PIDS. But to add, the ones I just want to talk about is if you're collecting TPOT and tippy toes data, this is really important. So anyone who's being observed needs to be under teaching and teacher assistant. Anyone who is doing the observing, using the TPOT or tippy toes, needs to be a TPOT reliable observer or a tippy toes reliable observer. And anyone who's doing coaching needs to be labeled as a coach. So this kind of goes back to who needs to be entered into the system as an employee. So you want to enter, and again, this is all on that guide on the website. I'll show you again, but you want to enter anyone who is working for your program, who is being observed using the TPAD or Tippy Toes or being coached. And then you want to enter anyone, even if they are not technically employed by the program, who is providing coaching, and anyone who is doing TPAD or Tippy Toes observations, even if they are not technically employed by your program. And this is because when you go to enter the TPAD or Tippy Toes, you need to designate who actually did the observing, and you can't do that if they're not on your employee roster. Beyond that, once you put people in as a coach or a TPAD or Tippy Toes reliable observer, they then have to be approved at the state level. So Julie or I have to go in and say, yes, this person attended this training on this state. All right.
So Marissa, two questions that feel relevant at this point. Is the email field a required field?
It is. So let me show you what I put in. It is required, but if you don't have an email, you can put in a fake one. So it is required, but if you need to, you can put in a fake email.
Thank you. And then can you clarify again? Folks can have multiple job functions, more than one, be assigned to 2 or more functions, correct?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So you can see this teacher right here is a teacher, a Tippy Toes reliable observer, and a classroom coach. And so like if you have a teacher who's providing coaching or doing your Tippy Toes, they can be assigned as both. And then the last section is the classroom assignment. So you would just want to assign what classroom that teacher is working in. And then you can change it as teachers change classrooms. When you have all that information entered, you would just go ahead and click save. I'm going to click cancel just because this person's already been entered and I don't want to mess up the data I have. So I'm going to hit cancel on this one. And then I want to show you the children dashboard. So and before I get there, I do want to talk a little bit about teacher and teacher confidentiality. And so one thing to think about is you're entering teachers. So on mine, I used first and last names and I didn't code anything. That is an option if that's something you would like to do. So just thinking about your teachers and thinking about your program. And the reason I say that, right, is when you enter a TPAD or Tippy Toes, you have to, you do assign them to a teacher. And by using their real names, that assigns that score to a person in your program. And so it's totally okay to code names if needed. And so just thinking about what you might want to have conversations in your program about what people would be the most comfortable with or what's going to make the most sense for your program. I don't know if Julie has to that.
I think it makes sense. And you mentioned about the user agreement.
Yep. So one thing too, so we've kind of created a user agreement. We've created a user agreement that we need you to have teachers sign if you're going to be using their real program. Just to have, can you guys see, is this showing up?
No.
Okay, yeah.
It downloads and you have to open it because it's a Word document.
Here it is.
So it'll download and then you can just open the Word document.
Right here. Can you see it now? Give me a,
Yes.
okay, thanks, Julie. Thanks, Tina. Yeah, so we have this kind of as an example on that website. And so we would like getting written permission from teachers if you're going to be using their names, just because we are sharing that data beyond your program. And so teachers need to be aware that their information is going into a system and being shared with other people.
And we'll also adjust the coaches agreement to include language around this. Many of you are having a broader coaches agreement and we'll plan to insert some of the data system language right into that agreement as well.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and go to the children dashboard so I can show you how to add a child as well. So you would need to add children if you are going to use the ASQSE piece or the behavior incident report piece. So to do that, I'm going to click on children on this left-hand menu and that takes me to the child dashboard. See that add new child button at the top. I'm going to go ahead again and just pick one that I've already entered, and then we can just take a look at all the stuff that goes into adding a child. So I went to actions and I went to edit. We're going to take a look at Holly here. So you can see to enter a new child, I need to know the first and last name and date of birth. Again, I'm going to give each child an ID number. And again, that's to keep that child anonymous at certain viewing levels and certain reports. And then I'm going to put in an enrollment date or the date that they enrolled. And then I need to put in some demographic information, such as gender, ethnicity, race, dual language learner, and then individualized education program. All of these fields are required in order to add a new child to the system. So one thing that we need to think about as a state and as individual programs is how are we collecting this data? If you're going to use this piece, how are you collecting this information respectfully from families, right? And so I'm not sure what that's going to look like depending on the program, but to enter a new child, you do need all of this information in order to move forward. The discharge date and the discharge reason, you would fill out when if and when the child leaves the program for any reason, whether they were removed or if they left on their own. On this page, you can add notes. You can put in status histories. So if a child has a long medical leave, you can put that in there. And then the next most important thing to add is the classroom assignment. So to be able to filter any of those reports, the ASQ data or the BIR data, you need to add children to classrooms in order to filter it by classroom. And so to do that, you would just add a new classroom assignment. That's kind of what the child dashboard looks like, and that's how you would enter a new child.
I have a question,
Yeah.
Marissa, that seems timely. Must you enter all children in the program, or can you enter them as they receive BIRs?
It's a good question. You need to enter all the children. And this is because the system offers some really great equity reports, but the way they calculate equity is based off of your whole program's population. So you do need to enter every child. And that also it kind of sets you up so that, if Johnny gets a behavior incident report, you don't have to go through the process of then adding him and then adding the BIR. You can just go ahead and find him right away. All right. Any other questions about, so again, the process would be classroom, employees, and then children when kind of starting the setup process of PIDS.
So a question about parent permission to collect and share these data?
Yes. So I'm going to go back and show you the website again. And can you see this screen? Just want to make sure that everybody can see the website. So let me kind of highlight the website. So first off, thank you to Tina Hogo for putting this together. It looks awesome. Woohoo. And so this is a great time to kind of highlight this, because at this point, I'm kind of going to walk away from the nitty gritty of how to enter all these individual pieces and all the different text fields. And so I just want to show you some of the features of this. So how I got here is you go to the WEAM website. Okay. And then you click on pyramid model, and then it's data system resources right there. And that takes you right to the page. On this page, first off, there's a link to actually get into PIDS. So that's where you'll get, this is the page you need to have to be able to get into PIDS. And then, oh, go ahead, Julie.
There was a question about that. You can also then bookmark it in your, it's a web-based platform, and you can then just bookmark it in your profile if that feels safe to you.
Yep. And you can also, if it feels safe to you, could also make a shortcut onto your desktop if you wanted. So on this page are those printable resources. So there's the PIDS quick guide to setup. That's really going to go through that information I just shared about how to set up your classrooms, employees, and children. We're going to talk about this in just a little bit. We have a whole sheet about user roles, which we kind of discussed. And then we have got, we'll talk about reports in a little bit. There's a program user agreement that you will, when you become a user of PIDS, you'll have to agree to. And that will actually be put into the system so that when you sign up to be a user, you'll have to read through this agreement and agree to it. And basically, you should read it, but basically it's saying I'm going to keep all the data confidential and secure, right? And I'm only going to use it for the purposes of helping my pyramid model implementation at my program. And then down here are all of those sample parent agreements and teacher agreements. So we took a look at the teacher agreement, and then down here are also some sample parent agreements that you can check out. And so again, to enter children into PIDS, you do need written consent from parents to use their sensitive information into this, to put it into the system. Again, because it is being shared beyond the program level. Any follow-up questions to that?
Yes, and everything is password protected, so you can go to the site, you'll get your own login, you'll create your own password that you won't share with anybody because your access and your password are specific to you.
And then also on this page, you can get to our YouTube tutorial videos. So that's why I say I'm going to kind of stop talking about the nitty gritty of how to put in information and all the different fields. So anytime that you're starting to enter new data or thinking about doing it, check out the tutorial videos. I tried to make them really short, or as short as I could, and just watch them because they really go through how to enter the data and then how to pull the data, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. Okay, so we've been talking about some confidentiality things. So one thing I do want to bring up at this point is that back entering of data. So first off, again, thank you to those of you who are able to send me your data. And Jared and I have been working, especially Jared, but I've been helping a little bit, get that data into the system. So any BOQs that you have clarified or sent to me have been entered. One thing to note about BOQs. And just to highlight it, I'm just going to go to the BOQ dashboard. So benchmarks of quality right here. So the ones that we were used to be doing were the BOQ 1.0. You can see that the one on PIDS is the BOQ 2.0. And so in order to put the old data or the previous data onto the PIDS, we had to translate it. And so to translate it, we kind of took items we were able to match up from the 1.0 to the 2.0 and transferred those scores over. And then items that we were not able to match up, we put a not in place for. All in all, it's only 5 items that we were unable to match up. But that also means that 11 items from the previous BOQ, the BOQ 1.0, did not match up, so they are not being translated over. If you want to kind of see our thinking behind that or how we match those items up, you can come to that data system resource page and check out this crosswalk of the BOQ 1.0 and BOQ 2.0. And that will also tell you those 5 items on the 2.0 that did not have a match. And so if you read through those and you think, but we've done this, you are more than welcome to go back to your previous BOQs and correct that from a not in place to a partially or an in place, depending on what your leadership team thinks.
So what Marissa just gently proposed to you is that as you look at your BOQ scores, they may look lower than what they look like on the 1.0 version. You can go in and change things, think about retroactively, or you can just agree that we're going to move forward with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. And then beyond that, for those of you who have sent me your TPOD and Tippy Toes data, I've been working to get that entered as well. And so to enter that, I have been entering teacher names in the classrooms that you have given me. So when you get into your system, if as a program you decide, whoa, we need to code the names, you can change anything in the system that we put in, right? Or if you get into your BOQs and you think, okay, this person was never a part of our team, go in, edit the BOQ, take that person out. So all of the information that's in the system, you can edit. I mean, I don't think I would go in and change the scores or the ratings because that is taken from the previous data. But any of those names or the classroom names, especially those classroom IDs, because to enter classroom, I had to put in an ID number. So I just kind of made one up. So you should make the system work for you, and you can go back and change whatever you need to change. As far as those teacher names, talk to the teachers at your program, get the written consent if you want to use teacher names, and if not, go back in and code those teacher names before looking at TPOD and Tippy Toes data. Do I have any questions about the back entering process or about anything I've covered so far?
Sorry, no questions about the back entering. I'll affirm we're shifting to using BOQ 2.0. It's an adapted tool that represents the important equity work that we are responsible to do in Wisconsin. And also we're going to strongly encourage you to shift to using this platform as the BIR platform. Some of you are using the standalone BIR form. We believe that, especially as we lean into really using the equity reports to guide our thinking and our work in Wisconsin, that that the PIDS system is going to be much more fluent and have greater capacity to allow us to do that well. This is also where I feel I should say your participation in this system and using different pieces is completely optional. There have been several questions about how well does this system play nicely with others. Marissa, do we have time to, can I talk about that right now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
It doesn't play nicely with others right now. And I'm sorry about that. It's not, again, it's an evolving tool. We anticipate that as it builds nationally, there will be conversation about adapting it so that it does play nicely with other systems used across states. That it is also my promise to you right now that we do not expect that you are going to double enter data. If you are entering data, for instance, in EduClimber or Infinite Campus or some other systems that are working well for you, that is a system you should probably continue to use. We will ask you for your data because we need the data to tell the story of the entire state of Wisconsin. And so we will figure out how to get those data from you in a way that's reasonable and then continue to back enter them. That said, I firmly believe that having everything in one spot so you can cross-reference around how much coaching and what does that mean for child outcomes, it might behoove you to consider, to seriously consider the PIDS as a system.
So I'm going to kind of take some time to just show you some additional capabilities of the system that maybe we didn't have access to before. So the first one is a communication piece. So I'm going to go back to the main dashboard by clicking the Wisconsin State Pyramid Model Implementation Data System up here. That's going to take me to the main dashboard. And so there are a couple of ways that the state level or the community level can kind of communicate with individual programs. And I just kind of wanted to highlight those really briefly because I think they're pretty cool. So the first one is by setting due dates. And I want to be really clear when I start talking about this, we have no due dates set as of right now. We have no plans to set them, but if you remember the old BOQ system, you might get some emails about when your BOQs were due. So now if we need to set any due dates, we can do that right here on the system, and that's where you would see it, okay? Beyond that, you might see this button right here. It says show news. So I'm going to go ahead and click it. And then I have some news that I can do. And so news can come from the community level or the state level. And it shows up on, and you can assign it to certain groups of programs or programs to share it with. And the news can be used for reminders of when things are due or just little notes about, wow, great job collecting our data or whatever you need to use it for. But I think it's a nice feature and an ability to kind of communicate within the system with your programs. Another nice feature, I'm going to go ahead and hide the news so I can show you some more, is this uploaded files piece. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. So in the system, you can upload files. And so one file that you might want to upload is your action steps or your action plan. And so this you can put your action plan right into the system. So anyone who has access to the system can then see your action plan and reference it. So it's just in this one place where everything else is, right? Again, just keeping everything in one place is a huge, huge benefit of the system. And then finally, I think the biggest great thing about the system is the ability to view and use your data instantaneously. And so I want to spend some time talking about reports and other ways to look at your data. And so to do that, I'm going to go to the ASQSE Screenings dashboard. I'm going to do that by going over here to the left side menu and clicking on ASQSE Screenings. And so again, I put in a whole bunch of fake data with some fake people. And so I'm going to scroll down a little bit. So anytime you enter data onto any of these dashboards, it automatically goes into this list. So you can see this is a list of all of the ASQSE screenings that I've entered since I started playing around with the test system. This list, I can sort it, I can filter it. So for example, I can sort it by score. So if I want to put the lowest scores, I can click that total score right here. And those are all my low scores first. And then I can click it again and I'll get a list of high score to low score. I can also do it by date. So I can sort it from the newest or the oldest to the newest, or the newest to the oldest. And then beyond that, I can use this search bar to find a specific child. So I'll put in Pippi, and that'll pull up all of the ASQSE screenings for Pippi Longstocking. And then I can also do it where I put in a score type or a score interpretation. So if I put in the word above, that will pull up all the children who scored above the cutoff. And that way I can kind of look, so if you look at my dates here, this is kind of my, when I did it in the fall. So these are all the students who scored above the cutoff in the fall. And I can do the same thing for monitoring. So that's kind of a really nice feature. Another thing to kind of point out on this page is right over here, this little pie graph. Pie graphs are available on most of the dashboards that kind of just give you a really quick snapshot into your data. And the one on the ASQ is going to show you your percentages of above the cutoff in the monitoring zone and well below within the past year. So I think that's kind of a nice feature. And like I said, on almost every dashboard, you're going to see a pie graph like that. The final nice way to kind of view your data is the use of the reports. So reports are available on their own page. They're on the reports page that you can get to by coming up here to the upper right hand menu, and you're going to click on reports. So PIDS offers a lot of reports. I think the number for data collectors that you can view is 32, which is really exciting, but it's a lot. So while I'm waiting for my page to upload, I'm going to go back to that data resources page, and I'm going to show you one of the resources that we kind of talking about more. So this resource is called the Best Reports for Leadership Teams, and I recommend you take a look at it. It's 4 reports that we have found pretty useful, and they might already be reports that you're kind of familiar with using on from our other data systems, and they're a little more succinct than some of the ones that are available. I will say right now on this resource, there are no BIR reports listed, and that's because the BIR reports are one of the reports that kind of keep getting updated and upgraded as the developers kind of learn more about how we're using that data. I think at some point we will obviously add that to this list, but right now it's not on there. All right, so I'm going to go back to my to the test site, to the reports page. So like I said, you can see there's lots of reports. I'm going to show you an ASQSE. So the best way to navigate the reports page is to put in the tool you want to use into the search bar, and then it will just pull up all the reports that have to do with that tool. So I just want to show you this ASQSE score type percentage report. So to do that, I'm going to click select. I can figure out what data I want to include. So I can either make my window really small or really large, depending on how much data I want to include. For this specific report, the score type percentage report, I suggest a really small window. Like, so if you do your screenings once a year or twice a year, you just want to make sure you're only including one screening or like one child screening at a time. So I'm just going to pull this report up for the fall of 2020. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and run the report so that you can kind of see what it looks like.
The system is pretty fast. It slows down when you're sharing it in a Zoom meeting though.
Thank you, Julie. So this is the report. This is what most of the reports are kind of going to look. They have very similar formats. So the first thing to kind of point out is most of the reports are going to give you kind of a basic understanding of what's included. So you can see it shows me my first screening date, my last screening date, and the number of screenings that are included in this report. Most reports are also going to offer you a table along with a graph. So this is giving me a table by questionnaire of how many kids scored above in the monitoring zone and well below. Now, if I use this arrow to kind of scroll through my report, I'm going to get to this graph. And this was going to show me that the same information, so the percentage of children who scored above the cutoff in the monitoring zone and well below by questionnaire, right? So that's a really, I think that's a really useful report. I hope that you guys will find that pretty useful. This report is nice too because I can run it. I can use these filters over here to run it by classroom. So if I just wanted to see what this looks like in my Cricut classroom, I can select Cricut and then run the report again. And then it'll show me just the data in the Cricut classroom. So you can see my number of screenings decreased to 10. And then you'll see a different kind of graph when I scroll through my report. Other reports that are available that I'll just kind of quickly show you are the BOQ report. So this is the BOQ trend report. So you can, this is showing your averages of your BOQs. Or sorry, it just depending on what view you're in. For a program, it's going to show you the real scores. You can use all these reports at the hub level as well, so which will give you an average of the programs. There's also the tippy toes, if I can get it up here. The teapot and tippy toes, these are very similar. I just pulled up a teapot trend report that you can pull by individual teacher, individual classroom. And then there are
also, Marissa, right, that report that you just showed is an average, right? That teapot average across teachers. That's what your leadership team looks at as you think about priorities for professional development or staff meeting conversation about adjustments in practices or policies.
Yeah, so this one right here, you can see the number of forms included is 15. So it is averaged for all the teachers. And then with that addition of the coaching role, we're hopeful that you'll be able to pull this for just to work with individual teachers, not to look at as a leadership team, but to work with individual teachers to look at just their data as well. And then finally, the system does offer some BIR reports, and I just want to show you a few just because I think there are some nice filters. I'm looking at my time and I think I've got about maybe 2 minutes. I'm going to go really fast. Yep. Okay. So again, the best way to find a report is to just put it in the search bar. So two ones, I'll just highlight two. So there's a BIR equity report. So this is going to break down your data. I'm going to go ahead and select it just so I can kind of show you how it works. So again, you're going to put in the start date and the end date, and then you can select the BIR profile group. And that's why you need to put in all that information for all your children and why you need to enter all your children into the system. You can pull the report by that. And then you're going to look at a profile item. And so you can kind of compare these demographics based off of the behavior incident frequency, in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and dismissals. And so I think behavior incident frequency is how often kids are getting behavior incidents, and then dismissals are going to be based off of that discharge piece that you will fill out when children leave your program. And then the other one I'll just highlight really quick is we'll just look at this item detail. Actually, yeah. And so the reason I want to point this one out is on your BIRs, they do offer a lot of filters that you can use. So, right, I can filter by all of those demographics that I'm entering for children, but then I can also filter by pieces of the BIR. So for example, let's say you're noticing you're having a lot of kids being taken out of the room or in the office. You can actually select this. You can select the administrative follow-up or the strategy response as that, and then see what behaviors are maybe, or when this is happening. So you can kind of dive deeper into your data using the filters on this side, which I think is a really cool feature as well. Beyond that, there's one other BIR report that you can access. And
Marissa, can I just tag on to what you just said? That's related to a question, right? Does the BIR data follow a child to another program? No, because from a pyramid model perspective, the BIR data is your barometer around teacher practices, around what adults are doing, right? And so in exactly that example that Marissa gave, what's making teachers feel like kids have to be sent away from the room, right? And then how can we think about enhancing our strategies around that? That's exactly an example of why the data won't follow kids. It's the data around what adults are doing.
Mm-hmm. And then there is one report that's not available on the reports page that I just want to show people. My feeling is that this might not be around as soon as they kind of figure out these BIR reports, they might get rid of this, but I do want to show it because I think people might be familiar with this one. So if I go back to my homepage by clicking this upper Wisconsin State Pyramid Model Implementation Data System, and I can go right to the behavior incident report dashboard. And then if I scroll all the way to the bottom, I can pull the NCPMI behavior incident Excel report. So I would select my school year, and then I would generate the download link. And what that's going to show is, let me see, I already have it. Let me see.
So essentially what the report does is it dumps it into the Excel that some of you might already be using.
Exactly. So this is, you might be familiar with this Excel sheet. And so it will take the data you put into PIDS and put it into this for now. So if this is something you feel really comfortable using, you can download this and use this still as you kind of get more familiar with using the other PIDS reports. And that's kind of just some general information about the really awesomeness of the reports and the awesomeness of PIDS. And I really again, thank you guys so much for coming and learning a little bit more. What other questions are out there? Are there any more?
I'm looking in the chat. I think we've addressed questions around who can see child level data, right? Child level and teacher level data are linked to your program because this is about program-wide implementation, right? That's why we're collecting and using the data. That's part of what's in the agreement. We'll post the recording to our YouTube channel and share the link via the email, the reminder email that came out. So we'll share the recording that way. We talked about the fact that children are, or that we can't currently upload data into the system nor download it in a way that interplays with other systems. There is a question about, can students be dually enrolled? So can a child be enrolled as, for instance, kids who attend Head Start in a non-collab program and then also attend 4K in a different program, or maybe even childcare, kids who go to Head Start and then go to childcare? Can a child be enrolled in two different programs?
Yes, yeah. They should,
again, because it's specific to the child. The program does have the capacity to pull data at the hub level. So I'll acknowledge that we have communities that are working to deeply implement at the community level. Appleton, Watertown, Verona, who am I missing? Even Oshkosh, UW Oshkosh, I think how you have individual sites, but are also part of a larger program, you can pull at the larger program level. And so we'll be working on securing some permissions for that, right, as part of your work, so that you can pull sort of from an aggregate at the community level that will advise what's happening on a broader level.
Any other questions? And otherwise, I'm going to talk about how to get started. Yeah. Okay. So then the way to kind of get started with the process is we've created a form, which I'm going to pull up right now and then share. So this is the Wisconsin State Pyramid Implementation Data System enrollment form. And so to use the PID system, we ask that you kind of complete this to kind of start the process. So we need some basic information, right? Name of program, an email address that someone can reach out to with questions. You're gonna indicate what kind of program is implementing pyramid model. And I wanna be really clear on that, is we really wanna think about what classrooms or programs are doing the implementing. And I say that because we have some programs where the implementation is program wide from birth to 5, and then we have some where it's just like the 4K room. And so really thinking about who is implementing pyramid model. And so you can see there's a community-based pre-K option, which would be a public 4K in a community site, and then a school district pre-K option, which is a public 4K in a public school setting. The next question is giving us permission to view your data. So the idea with this is if you're if you give us permission to view your data, then we are expecting you to secure those permissions from parents and from legal guardians and from employees to collect their data, right? And so that's a program responsibility. And then our responsibility is to kind of monitor the user agreements. And then we're going to ask you to kind of list who you think should be users. And we're going to ask you to list first name, last name, email address, and the role. And the role is kind of what role do they play at your school and on your leadership team, and then thinking about, do they need to be able to enter data, and can they view that confidential information? And confidential information is teacher names and child names / sensitive information. And then we'd like to have a list of who does your TPATs and TPITOs, so that we can kind of keep an eye out for them on the state level to approve them once they've been put into your employee roster. And then for our use, it would be really helpful to know what you're kind of thinking about, what kind of data you're planning on recording using PIDS. And this is really to help us kind of think about where we're spending our time in developing resources, right? And so this will be really helpful for us to kind of know what pieces people feel like they're really ready to use and what pieces they're a little less sure on. Below that is a question about, so if you don't plan to collect your ASQSE data on PIDS, but you are collecting your ASQSE data, we just want to hear about how you're collecting that. Again, Julie kind of mentioned this earlier, just so like we can access that data to kind of help us kind of see what pyramid model looks like as a whole in the state of Wisconsin, even if you're not recording that information on PIDS. And then the final question is just, what support do you need moving forward? So any questions there we can answer. Once you've completed this form and submitted it, you can expect an email within 3 weeks to kind of start the official process of getting user accounts and signing that user agreement.
So the question is, how do you get this form? And what I think we're not going to do right now is plop it in the chat box.
Okay.
I think we're going to wait, and we'll send this form to the folks you have said are the liaisons to the state. So we have that, and Jared's been trying to sort of keep track of that. We have an administrator's email, right? Because we want to make sure that you're having a discussion at the leadership team level around who's going to have this access, and then have some assurances, right? That folks aren't just randomly, not that anybody's going to do that, but that we're vetting sort of who we're putting into the system with someone who can make that decision at your program's level. So know that we'll be sending the link to this recording more broadly to the whole list. So the list of folks who got the reminder about this webinar today was big, and then we'll share this with whoever is identified as the administrator at your program level. So if you don't see it, right, ask about. Any last questions? It's a lot, right? And so we're going to do this like a turtle. We're going to do this slow but steady, and we'll ease into this, right? We don't have to tell the whole story in this year, but what a story we're going to be able to tell, right? What a story that represents the importance of your work being acknowledged and supported, because you are changing developmental trajectory for the young children who are fortunate enough to be enrolled in your program. And it is our great honor to be associated with that work. So slow but steady, right? Slow but steady. We'll ease into this. We'll be planning opportunities like this. Marissa can negotiate through that system very quickly. You won't be able to do it as fast as that, just so you know, right?
I've also had a lot more time to play around with it than anyone else.
That's it. So really not requirements. The system is, so we do have some folks who have sort of tried it out for us and provided feedback. The system is pretty intuitive, right? And there's not anything that you that you enter or delete that we can't try to figure out how to get back for you. Okay, so know that, feel a little reassured. There's some safety buffers built into how the system was designed. All right. With that, I want to offer my sincere thanks to Marissa for putting this together, right? Try to talk in 1 hour about something you've been spending the last several months learning. I think she did a fantastic job. And so with our best wishes, we'll say goodbye. Thank you all.
Thank you.